Yeah, you're live. Okay, welcome everybody. We're at Munn Ice Arena. This is the Big Ten championship game, Michigan State versus Michigan morning skate. I'm just gonna go over. I'm gonna go over the recent news story about the Crumbly parents. Okay, the Oxford High School campus mass shooting. Okay, now Ethan, the kid, he was charged with terrorism and murder. He's spending life in prison. Okay, but it's one of the first case. It's the first case ever that parents are being charged with. They both were found guilty for involuntary manslaughter. I want to ask you this question. I'm going to go over this assignment that I was given for a critical essay for my criminal justice class. Do you think it's fair that the parents are being charged with involuntary manslaughter? Okay. Now keep this in mind. The dad bought the gun when he was 15 years old, and he let him go practice at a shooting range. Now many parents do this with their kids, right? Many parents go shoot guns at shooting ranges with their kids. So ask yourself, is that a crime? Is that a crime that they were shooting guns together at a shooting range? And the same thing with the mother. The mother also went to the shooting range, okay? Um, and what they used against him for, and both the parents that they had knowledge was they pulled a text that said, "I'm seeing demons." That's what the kid said to his mom through a text message. And they used that against him and the parents, okay, in court. So then ask yourself this question, okay? Does anybody that reads the Bible, which there's demons in it and angels, okay, can that be used against them that they're crazy? Ask yourself that logical question, okay? So if anybody talks about demons, are they now a risk? Okay, now if a parent takes their kid or son or daughter to a shooting range, okay, and then their son or daughter goes to school, okay, and commits a shooting, are they liable? Should they be liable? Ask yourself that question. It's a good question to ask. It's a good topic to talk about. Okay, but here's my critical essay assignment for criminal justice class. Okay, in what was a somewhat surprising decision, Jennifer and James Crumbly, okay, were found guilty of involuntary manslaughter, the first parents to be ever held criminally responsible for a mass shooting that was committed by their child. As you may recall, their son, Ethan, killed 4 and injured 7 at Oxford High School in 2021. You can find significant information on the case. Generally, this article, Apple News, he gives, discusses the conviction of the parents. Your essay should address the question: should parents be held criminally responsible for the criminal actions of their child? Your essay should have at least 3 paragraphs. In the first paragraph, you should think like a prosecutor and argue that parents should be responsible. In the second paragraph, you should think like a defense attorney and argue the parents should not be responsible. In the third paragraph, you should discuss your opinion about their convictions and discuss the implications of this legal precedent. So the key word there is precedent. So now the justice system, that's all they go by. It's called case law. They don't even go by. If you watch my video, I asked the same professor, do you think justices and judges should go by the tooth and the letter of the law? He couldn't give me a good answer. He said, no, they don't have to. Then the next class, he said they actually are allowed to break the law as long as they win in the battle. Okay, think of court like a game of tennis. It's like a racket. You use a racket and they just hit the ball back and forth. Okay, and as long as your team wins the suit, okay, the suitor, that's why they call it a lawsuit, or they're bringing a suit. If your team wins the suit, think of it like a game of cards, they don't care if you break the law. Okay, especially if you work for the state. If you work for the state, you can break any law you want, is what I'm coming to learn. As long as you win. Okay, that's what I've learned in my criminal justice class. Okay, so my personal opinion, if I'm a prosecutor, okay, and now this is set legal precedent across the state of Michigan and should be across the nation. Well, now I'm going to go after any parents right now as a prosecutor that are going to their gun ranges with kids. I could charge them with premeditated manslaughter. Which is, how do we know those kids aren't going to go to their schools and commit a shooting? You know what I mean? So we could do premeditated involuntary manslaughter. and we could, you know what I mean? Because we could stop, if you want to prevent another one of these from happening, well, then you go after all parents that keep a gun in the home. Because again, the number one killer in America for children ages 0 to 18, it's a gun. So I'm sick of hearing people say, guns don't kill people. No, it's really guns. Guns do kill a lot of people, and it's the number one killer of our children. So then anybody who keeps a gun in their home, if I'm a prosecutor and I go off this case, okay, now I can go after you for just keeping a gun in your home and having kids. Because like I said, they just set precedent with involuntary manslaughter. So now I can go for premeditated involuntary manslaughter. Okay. And then I could go after you for having a handgun, since that's the number one killer of children. Okay, that's a dangerous weapon. Okay. You have a terroristic weapon inside your house. And there's no need. I mean, in a smart, intelligent society, there should never be a weapon, because you wouldn't want violence. You wouldn't want any violence. And in a super intelligent society, you wouldn't want any violence or negativity or evil. Okay. So then if I'm a defense attorney, okay, I'm going to go the other way. So the prosecutor, yeah, let's charge everybody who had, that's my thing, is I'll charge any parent if they're found guilty, which is the precedent has been set. Now I'll go back to previous mass shootings, okay? And any kid that committed a mass shooting, you have to go charge their parents, okay? You have to go charge their parents now. And then to prevent any school mass shootings, as a tough prosecutor, if I follow the law and precedent, I'd go after any parents who kept a gun in the home with children. If your child's over 18, you can have a gun in the home. But if your child's under 18, you cannot have a gun in the home. It's that simple. That's as a prosecutor. Okay. Now, as a defense attorney, I would argue that if you charge these parents, if I would argue this to the jury, if you find my client, whoever it was, Jennifer or James Crumbly, guilty, well, then you must find the administrators at the school guilty, because they were actually told about it. And the school liaison officer at Oxford High School and all the administrators, they got reports from concerned students days before the shooting, which they could have prevented it by just searching the kid's bag every day he comes into school. All you gotta do is search his bag. That's it. So they were notified by multiple Oxford High School students who also filed a lawsuit against the district. Okay, so as a defense attorney, I'd make my case to the jury, okay, and the state, that the parents should not be charged, because then we have to charge all parents that have a gun in the home, and we could charge them with involuntary premeditated manslaughter. Okay, same thing with the administrators. I would argue to the jury as a defense attorney, okay, if you find my clients guilty, then you must, because the administrators had more knowledge. On top of that, okay, they were mandatory reporters. Okay, so keep this in mind. If when you go to be a public employee for a school, you sign a contract, and it states you are a mandatory reporter for sexual exploitation and violence. So anytime there's sexual abuse or violent abuse and a child reports it, it is their duty, okay, as a mandatory reporter, to report it to the authorities. Okay, so as a defense attorney, I would argue every administrator who knew that Ethan Crumbly was armed and dangerous multiple days before the shooting, they also must be charged with involuntary manslaughter and domestic terrorism, because that's what the parents are being charged with. Ethan was charged with terrorism. Okay, which I think that's fair. You go shoot up a school, that's terrible. That's terrorism. Okay. But again, that could have all been prevented if the administrators would have done their job. If the police liaison officer would have done his job, it could have all been prevented. Okay. So then the third paragraph, I guess I already stated it, but it says, in your opinion, discuss the implications of this legal precedent. Well, I kind of just did that. Okay, there's huge implications. So now that these parents are charged, okay, with involuntary manslaughter, now you have to go back to all school shootings, and you have to charge the parents. You know what I mean? Because that would be fair justice for equal justice for all, which we don't have yet in this country. And then I would also charge the school administrators. Every school shooting, you have to charge the school administrators because their job is to protect the student's safety, which they failed to do so. Okay, so it's a slippery slope, this case, and they really didn't have much evidence. So I don't know. The jury decided they were guilty. They didn't have like good evidence. They had more hard evidence against the administrators, okay, and the school liaison officer than they did on the parents. Okay, because the parents, they truly didn't break any laws. They didn't. That's my opinion. The school administrators and the police liaison officer, they actually broke their contract with the state of being mandatory reporters. The parents don't have that contract. Okay, they can run their family however they want to do it in the privacy of their own home. Anything that happens inside their home, like, you can't do anything about it unless they're like hurting people. Okay, which they weren't. They were just, whatever you think of them, they were their own family inside their private home. But once you become a public employee, like those school administrators and the police liaison officer, it's now a dereliction of your duty, okay, as mandatory reporters, okay, that you didn't report it and you didn't prevent it. And all you had to do was open the kid's bag. Because you had students tell you, he was bragging about it days before to students, what he was going to do. And the students that heard this, they did the right thing. Any kid, they go tell on him. You know what I mean? I'm telling on him. They went and told the administrators and the police liaison officer, and they did nothing. So if you were happy that these parents were charged, that's great. But now you need to go ask why the school administrators aren't being charged with involuntary manslaughter. Why is the police liaison at Oxford High School, why is he not charged? I mean, he's supposed to protect the school, he or she. Why is he not charged, or she? See how it's not really fair and equal justice for all. Okay, so that's my opinion, and that's I've written a critical essay on it. But yeah, I'm gonna turn this thing around here. You can watch the morning skate. I'm gonna do some more. Love you, Palmy. I'm actually going to read you involuntary manslaughter. Okay, manslaughter is the unwillful killing of a human being without malice aforethought. Now, do you think that the parents actually had any part of killing those kids? Also termed culpable homicide or murder. Okay? First degree manslaughter. See voluntary manslaughter. Okay. Intoxication manslaughter, 1993, an unintentional homicide committed by an intoxicated person while operating a vehicle or some other type of machinery. Involuntary manslaughter. Homicide in which there is no intention to kill or do grievous bodily harm, but that is committed with criminal negligence or during the commission of a crime not included within the felony murder rule, also termed negligent manslaughter, second degree manslaughter, manslaughter in the second degree, accidental killing. Involuntary manslaughter is a catch all concept. It includes all manslaughter not characterized as voluntary. The only differences between the legal use and the everyday use of voluntary, not voluntary, and involuntary seem to be a more frequent use of involuntary as a synonym of not voluntary, and B, a technical use of involuntary in the crime of involuntary manslaughter, where it seems to have the meaning of unintentional. Thus, as contrasted with voluntary manslaughter, there is no suggestion that death, as contrasted with harm, was intended or foreseen, though it is often confined to cases of assault and battery where death results. Wow, not a school shooting. For example, either from the withholding of food or from excessive chastisement of a child. Some jurists say that it can be due to an unlawful and dangerous action causing death. Now ask yourself this question, okay? Take away anything I've said about the news story, and if you've been following the Crumbly case, I mean, what's your opinion? Do you think the parents should be charged? And if you say yes, okay, then ask yourself why the school administrators haven't been charged, or the school police liaison, because they also had knowledge of it. Now, they didn't buy the weapon, but they knew the kid had a weapon because they had students tell them that. Okay, and all they had to do was search his backpack every day he came into school after they got those reports. Okay, and they could have expelled the kid right away. You know what I mean? As soon as they hear those reports, suspension and expulsion. There's many options they had on the table to prevent that shooting. That's the school administrator. Okay. Now, am I saying the parents should get a free pass? No, but from what I've read, they didn't really. They had no intent for their son to go do this. Okay. And if you look at the text messages, I don't think they never said, "Hey, go do the shooting." You know what I mean? So how can you charge them with involuntary manslaughter when they didn't know he was going to commit it and they weren't at the crime scene? They were never at the crime scene. The school administrators were, and the police liaison officer. Okay. So again, involuntary. I'm going to read it one more time. Involuntary manslaughter, homicide, in which there is no intention to kill or do grievous bodily harm. Now, he was charged with terrorism, the kid, okay, and murder, not homicide. Homicide, you know what I mean? He's charged with murder, not homicide. Homicide, in which there is no intention to kill or do grievous bodily harm, but that is committed with criminal negligence or during the commission of a crime not included with the felony murder rule. See how it says felony murder? That's what he was charged with. And terrorism. It says, but if you read the legal definition of involuntary manslaughter, homicide. Okay, let's look up homicide. Okay, the first four letters in homicide is homo, a male human, a homo sapien, a human being of either sex, a slave. Wow, a servant, a vassal, a feudal tenant, a retainer, dependent, or servant. That's what homo means, a slave. Wow, I didn't know that. Homicide, here we go. It's HOMI, homicide. Okay, homicidal, of relating to or involving homicide, likely to commit murder, the killing of one person by another, someone who kills another. Criminal homicide, homicide prohibited and punishable by law, such as murder or manslaughter. All right? That's the legal definition of both. How you doing? Go green.
Yeah, give me that.
You're gonna win it all.
Really?
I know it.
Let's do it.
But we better. I got a lot of money on it.